Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento. And you might be a little bit confused because this is a solo Sunday episode, and I don't always start the solo Sunday episodes this way, but it's because today is the first and only solo Sunday episode of all of 2023 where it's actually not just me. I am not solo in today's episode because for the first time in podcast history, you're going to see fully behind the scenes of how we operate as a team, because I am joined by someone who truly helps in big ways to make this show possible. In fact, there's a lot of things that we wouldn't be able to do here on the show without this person. So I'm so excited for all of you to meet someone who I've mentioned many times on the podcast before, but her name is Laura Chaves. She is such a key player in so many of the things that happen behind the scenes, including finding all of our guests. Pretty much every single guest that you hear on the air has gone through Laura's desk. She handles a lot of the research behind the scenes. She finds proactively all of these amazing guests. It's why so many of you tune into the show. Laura not only does all these things for the podcast, but she is incredibly skilled. She's based down in Colombia, which is why one of our retreats next year for this show is going to happen in Colombia. She has also managed international teams across continents before starting to work with the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. She's incredibly talented. She's got such great energy. I'm so excited for all of you to meet her. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive into this not so solo Sunday episode with not only me, but Laura Chaves, all of us from inside the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. All right, Laura, I'm so very excited that you are here. Welcome to the show.
I'm excited too, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. Honestly, you and I were obviously joking off the air. We talk almost every single day, which we'll talk about our internal team operations and how we communicate. We're going to give listeners so many glimpses into that. But Laura, it's really fun for me because obviously I don't usually talk to you in podcast mode. I feel like I'm using my podcast voice with you here. But it's fun for me to have you on the show because like I said in the intro, you are such a key player in everything that we do here. It's fun for listeners to get to see behind the scenes. I always get emails where people are like, Brian, how do you guys manage 5 days a week and all the things that go behind it? Give listeners a little glimpse into your life, all the great things you did even before we met. We're for sure going to talk about how we met and how you came on board, but give listeners that background into the life of Laura, a digital freelancer living in Colombia, doing great work all around the world.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, I'm based in Colombia. I've lived here all my life. And I learned English when I was very, very little because I knew I wanted to be international. So that was one of the biggest goals in my life to, work with international clients. Like that came later on, but I knew that I wanted to travel the world. So that's also one of my big goals. And well, I've been working for like 4 years. I graduated from university 4 years ago, and I started working in corporate. But I sort of wanted to have a different lifestyle that gave me a little bit more freedom. So I started trying out freelancing, and I enjoyed it a lot. And that's how I came across a job posting that you had on Upwork. That's basically how we met. I studied international business and marketing, and well, I love all things marketing. I am also a huge fan of podcasts because I love the radio and I love listening to podcasts. So when I met you, I thought like this was a great opportunity to get involved in the whole podcasting world, doing something that I know how to do. That's how I ended up here.
Yeah, I love that overview, Laura. Obviously, I know a lot of your backstory. It's so fun for me to have listeners get a glimpse into the way that our team operates. But what really stands out to me is that you already called it out. And I hope it's a big takeaway for listeners here today. This unique insight into behind the scenes is that you mentioned the freedom, the lifestyle. And obviously, that's something that motivates us as a team, us as a business. And I'm going to throw this out there. Listeners are going to hear us talk about you're involved in all my different businesses, Laura. And increasingly, you're more involved. I'm excited for the day where I say our businesses, because you know all my business partners across the different portfolio of companies that I'm involved in. And I think it's so important across that board that us at the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast, we don't just talk about the lifestyle. We don't just talk about the freedom. We actually practice what we preach. And you and I think it's funny. People always ask me about the way that we work internally. Laura, you and I don't even talk every single day. We have a lot of interactions for sure throughout the week, and we're very organized. We have a lot of great systems that support us. But talk to us about that freedom lifestyle, especially for a lot of people, whether they have their business already and they already are experiencing this, or they're in the boat of where you were, 6 months ago, just freelancing and picking up projects here and there, that they can start to enjoy that lifestyle. I'm super curious to hear your perspective on what your typical or not so typical day in beautiful Bogota, Colombia looks like.
Yeah, so you mentioned something important about this lifestyle, and it's that you have to be very, very organized, because we grew up in an environment, and I think that's like so Western of every country in America and in Western Europe, where like the education system told us what to do, when to do it. You have to go there like to a certain facility from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. To study, to work, to do, whatever you got to do. You have to do this. Like, we're very used to people telling us what to do and when to do it. So when you want a little bit of freedom, it can be a little bit scary, because you don't have anyone telling you like, okay, you have to do this. You have to do it, and you have to find the time and the space to do it. And that can be a little bit overwhelming. But when you want freedom, you will do whatever it takes. That was my case. I was very used to the corporate lifestyle, working 8 to 5 every weekday, Monday through Friday. And I just had my weekends for myself. But I realized, I did realize when I was still working at the company I worked at, that I was better and I was more productive working on the weekends. I love working on the weekends, which is like so atypical. A lot of people hate working on the weekends, but I actually love it. I don't know why. It just makes me feel more productive and pumped about the work that I'm about to do. And I actually hate working on Mondays. I think that's why people hate Mondays, because they are not motivated by them, because they're forced to do something they don't want to do. So I just basically went through a self discovery process where I realized, okay, I like to work on the weekends. I don't like that much working on Mondays. So I will just organize my schedule around that. And as I said, that can be very, very challenging, because there are a lot of things that you need to do, and things that you also want to do that are outside of work. So sometimes it can be easy to let work take over your personal life, or your personal life take over work. So it's just all about balance, knowing what you want. And to me, it's really important to know yourself, like know when you're more productive. If you're more productive in the mornings, then wake up early and start working in the mornings, and then you'll have the afternoons to yourself. Or the other way around, if you just like to sleep and you're a night owl, or you're way better at doing your job at night, then well, you can do it at night. Like it's just a matter of knowing yourself and organizing your life around that.
Yeah, I love the fact that you called that out, Laura. It's actually something you and I have never talked about between the two of us, which is really that the more freedom that we have and the more freedom that we desire. It's funny, when I was in my early 20s running my marketing agency in Boston, I used to think that meant that my entire life could be spontaneous. Well, now I have all this freedom. I can go to coffee shops in the middle of the day. I can meet up with friends at night. I don't have to worry about my schedule tomorrow morning. But I think that's a very astute point that you just made here on the air, which is that then means you actually need to be more structured and more rigid in your systems and in your processes. And obviously, you and I have we have some shared tools that we as a team use, but we both have our own very unique ways of staying organized. For me, you've seen it. I love a tool called Llama Life. I've talked about it a few times here on the air, just kind of in passing, but Llama Life is what keeps me on track. If my Llama Life is off, and my Google Calendar, for sure. And it's something that you and I have tackled together, especially as the year has gone on. The more we've ramped up the content that we create, you and I just went on a 1 week massive reshuffle of 3 months of my calendar calendar. And that was a big undertaking, but it came from that process of self-discovery of me saying, hey, what's my energy like throughout the week? What's my energy like throughout the various days? I know I have a 2:00 lull. I don't do podcast interviews at 2:00, for example. So there's all of these different things that we consider, and it is that self-discovery. Laura, I'm going to ask you this before we start diving into the podcast stuff and talking about the world of entrepreneurship, which you have such unique insights into. But I want to ask you, because it's also curious for me to ask you this as someone who works with you, across all the different businesses that you and I both work in, across all the different projects that we always have going on, which there are always new ones coming up, how do you personally stay organized? Because you talk about, I obviously see the Slack notifications on weekends and I'm like, that's cool, Laura's working. And during certain times of day, it just, you can do what you want to do. How do you structure that? How do you choose what to work on? How do you set those hours aside? How do you get motivated and organized? I'd love to hear those insights.
Well, first things first, I don't like working on Mondays that much. So you won't see me around on Mondays, early. Maybe you will see me late at night. Maybe if I do have something to do that day or that week, I will work on a Monday. But yeah, I just don't like working on Mondays because I like to start off my week, on a different note, like reading or doing things that I enjoy so that I can prepare for the week ahead. And on Mondays, I sit down and I say, okay, like what are the priorities for this week? And I will just start seeing what motivates me to start working on. As you said, we have many projects going on. Some of them are urgent, some of them are not. And sometimes there's not really anything urgent. So when there's not really anything urgent, I'm like, okay, do I feel like I want to write today? Do I feel like I want to send emails today? Do I want to work on social media today? Like, I just ask myself in the mornings, what do I want to do today? Now, if there's something urgent, then I will start with that and I will do my best to try and find the inspiration and motivation. Sometimes I fail on doing it. Like, it's just like I start procrastinating and, putting it off for a couple of hours, and then I'm just like, okay, I need to sit down and do this. Because yeah, it happens to the best of us that we start procrastinating. There are things that we are just like, oh, I don't want to do this today, or I don't want to do this right now. So you just like the great thing and the cool thing, and you and I have talked about this. The cool thing about having different projects is that you can procrastinate some things while also being productive on others. So yeah, that's basically how I organize myself. I see especially how I feel about certain tasks, how I feel about doing certain things on that particular day. And of course, if there's something urgent, I will just sit down and get over it. But get it over with. Sorry, I get tongue tied there. But yeah, this is basically how I organize my day and my week. I usually, it's funny, but I leave like emails for the weekends, because I feel like I don't have like a pressure of people replying back to me on the weekends. Like, I know people won't be working, so it's like, okay, they won't reply to me today, they will probably do it on Monday, and on Monday I won't be like there waiting for their response or their email. So yeah, that's why I prefer to do it on the weekends. And then on Monday afternoon or on Tuesday, I can sit down and just check the emails that I sent on the weekends. Maybe, I mean, if we have guests listening, that's why you receive our emails usually on the weekends. It's because I'm working mostly on the weekends.
Definitely some unique behind the scenes for everyone who's tuning in today to hear how we work. And I just want to air it for listeners who are thinking about this. And I think this is such a unique perspective to hear the ways that different team members work. For Laura, for example, her Mondays, she's super introspective, for example. Whereas for me, Laura sees in our weekly, we have, actually, this is a little bit of an insight into the way that we work. So within our internal team Slack channel on Mondays and Fridays, there are intentional strategic check-in questions. Some of these are business oriented, such as what are your priorities? What are the things we need to get done this week? But some of them are just fun. Our Friday meetings are for sure way more fun, where it's just like, hey, what's something cool that you talked or that you saw this week, or something that made you laugh? And Laura will usually send a movie or something. And I'll usually, for me, it's quotes. I love quotes. So that really strikes me. But things like that. And so for me personally, for Laura, where she likes to be introspective on Mondays, I get up and get at it. Laura always comments on my Monday morning meetings where she's like, okay, you're excited. I can see your energy. And that's how I feel on those Monday mornings. So it really is about that first step. There's two things I want to call out now. The first step, Laura, that you raised for listeners is that self-awareness. Check in with yourself, see what's going on internally. And then the second thing that I heard from you, Laura, that I so respect, it's obviously part of your core discipline, and I want to share it with listeners, is that self-negotiating. I don't think we talk about that enough because, Laura, you and I are really good as a team about in Slack just being like, yeah, I'm putting this off right now. It's both you and I. It's not one of us that does that. We both do it. I'm very clear. I'm like, Laura, I don't want to do this task. I'm putting it off as long as I can this week. But I think it's important for us to have those moments. You talk about those moments where you sit down and you say, this is urgent. Let's just power through this. And we try to do our best in that regard. I think it's such an important part of the entrepreneurial world. With that said, I think that a key theme behind the scenes for the show this year, obviously my word of this year was intention and discipline. And I feel like so much intention is behind all of the things that we've been able to create and manifest here in 2023. And for sure, we're taking all this energy into 2024 with us. Laura, it brings me back to the first time you and I ever connected on Upwork. And I'm going to share a little bit because a lot of people do freelancing on Upwork and they're wondering, how do I stand out with all these proposals? So I posted, what month was this, Laura? Are we going with June-ish?
That was May.
May. Okay.
Yeah. The last week of May. I remember it very well.
Yeah. So it was in May where the podcast just has continued to grow, obviously all throughout these 7 years, but especially in 2023, we had a lot of inflection points of growth and things have been going really well. And I just needed additional team members. Andrew who's been with me for a long time. He's had a kid. He's been married. He's out in San Diego. Andrew's amazing. And so I was just like, we need an A+ team member. We need someone who I can trust. It's at the core of any good relationship, who I can trust in so many different ways. And I made a job posting on Upwork and got dozens and dozens of replies, but only one reply didn't sound like ChatGPT, was super personal and clearly actually read what I took the time to write in that job posting. And it's the only one that when I read the cover letter started out as, "Hi, Brian. When I read this, I'm pretty sure you're talking about me." Laura, during that process, when I interviewed you, I remember you and I both laid the scene of, hey, here's what we want short term. It blew my mind. Yesterday, or the other day, you said to us in our internal meeting, I hired you at only 5 hours a week back then. But here you are, a very valuable full-time member of the team. And we laid that groundwork that day. None of our growth, none of our increased engagement as an internal team happened this year without you and I setting the scene on day one saying, hey, here's where we want to go. Here's the types of projects that excite both of us. Here's the type of growth that we both want to experience separately. You on your own journey, me on my own journey, but most importantly, collectively, here's the way that we can grow together. And here we are a few months later. I'd love to hear your perspective on how all of that transpired so quickly too, obviously not by mistake, but by really careful intention and strategy and taking action.
Yeah, so I already told you the other day that everyone tells me that I'm like the best manifestor they've ever met because everything I say turns into reality. And I think that's true. And you mentioned that your word of this year was intention. And I think a lot of my manifesting skills come from that intention and from the discipline that you also mentioned. So I think I already said that I quit my corporate job to start freelancing. And that was this year. That was in February this year. And, I knew I wanted to grow. I knew I wanted to do things. I wanted to do different stuff that would allow me to have this kind of freedom and travel lifestyle, like digital nomad lifestyle that I still dream of. And I do want to have that, like as my lifestyle long term. But yeah, I just basically started looking very intentionally for jobs that were related to the entertainment industry. You already know this about me. I love the entertainment industry, or that had something to do with podcasting or content creation, something that could get me into the content creation world. And I saw your job posting. As you said, many people, and I know in the freelancing world, there are so many people out there right now looking for freelance gigs. And sometimes they don't sit down and think about what their clients really want. We are unique for what we know and what we do and what we can offer to clients. But sometimes as freelancers, I think we can forget that clients are also unique. So it is important to highlight what is unique about us and what's unique about the client. And I think that's where you and I connected very well, because I loved your job posting. It was very, very unique. You had like this PDF full of emojis, which I love emojis. And I was like, I really like this guy. And I was like he must be like really enthusiastic. I didn't know the podcast, so I didn't know how you were like, how you sounded like. When I met you, it was like, yeah, he's very, very enthusiastic. I could see that from the amount of emojis that were on the job posting. That I was like, okay, this person is very enthusiastic. I'm going to write an enthusiastic cover letter because I'm also very, very enthusiastic. So that's something we can connect from. That's a place we can connect from. Some people are not as enthusiastic, but are maybe, let's say, I mean, a little more reserved. But we can have like different things in common. So it's just like finding that middle ground with the client, with the person you're talking with. And I think that's what I did with you. I sent you a video saying like, hey, this is me. I want you to get to know me. I love the entertainment world. I love the business world. I love the fact that you have a business podcast. So yeah, I just think that it is all about being authentic, being yourself, and also thinking about the other person, like not just in business, but in general. It's just about knowing who you're talking with without losing your spark and who you really are.
Yeah, incredibly well said, Laura. I think right there, out of all the episodes we've had here in 2023, you are dropping some strategic knowledge bombs on every single listener here today. I think that's a level of not only maturity, but I think an extraordinarily high level of emotional intelligence on display right there. And a lot of people who are thinking, how do I stand out in an AI world, in a world where there's so much competition? Laura just gave you all the answer. This is for us. I mean, we have nothing to hide here at the show. We've been so excited about recording this episode for you here today, because these are the ways that not only do we live, not only the way that we believe that business should work, but this is the way that we actually do our work. This is the way that we show up in the world. So yes, enthusiasm for sure. And you're right. That was my intention with the job posting. I can't help myself, whether I'm on the air, whether I'm writing, whether I'm in real life. That's the way that I am. So why would I be anything other than that in the job posting? I'm sure a lot of people read that job posting and they were like, this guy's too much. He's got way too much energy. I could never work for this guy. So your vibe attracts the tribe. I think it's something that we've learned so frequently in life. Laura, I want to transition a little bit because you are the gatekeeper to this podcast. Pretty much every single guest comes through Laura Chaves. There are not many other ways to get on this show. So listeners, every single guest, for the most part, that you hear here on this show has gone through Laura. She's initiated the research. She's emailed and communicated with these guests. She does all that work behind the scenes, which, Laura, I would argue means that you see more businesses and more entrepreneurs than most people on planet Earth. With that in mind, what are some of the observations that you've had along the year? What sort of things, when you're looking at a potential guest, what do you use to do a little bit of research on them? Do you check out their website, their LinkedIn? Obviously, I know some of these answers, but what are some of those things that you look for? What stands out for you in a good way? What are some of the trends that you see? I'm super curious to hear your insights as well.
Yeah, so there are two key things that I see when I find a cool entrepreneur or someone who's doing cool stuff with their companies or organizations, and is their LinkedIn and their website. Those are like the two key places I go to. Their LinkedIn can tell me a lot about them, like what they've done, where they started, what they started, what they have been up to in their professional life, basically. And their website tell me a lot about their business and also about them. But that's like one point that I will touch on later on. So the first thing that I see, and the trend that I see on LinkedIn, is people who have, like this cool about us part. Well, they describe themselves very well. Like, it's concise. They don't start talking about, their family or their lives, which is cool to get to know people on a personal level. But sometimes it's just like, this doesn't go anywhere. This doesn't tell me anything about you or who you are when you're doing business. And I also love when entrepreneurs mention what they do, what it is that their business is about. And I think that's very important because it brings a lot of clarity. Like, so many people out there, and I've seen their LinkedIn profiles, they are just so poetic about what they do, or they don't even mention what it is that they do. Like, yeah, I have a business, but you don't really understand, and you cannot really understand from reading their LinkedIn profile or from going to their websites what they are about. Like, if you work in HR or in marketing, like, you should clearly say in your profile that you are an HR professional or a marketing professional, because sometimes that's hard to tell. So I think one important thing that I would love for listeners to take into account is to clearly state what your business is about, what you are about, what it is that you do, because I've seen so many people who do not do that. And I just love, and I pick up the entrepreneurs who actually describe who they are and what their business is pretty well. So yeah, that's number one thing. About the website, I love it when websites are easy to navigate. I think like the website, it's one of the most important places when we can get to know business nowadays. If you don't have cool website, a website that looks nice and that is easy to navigate, then people will just close the tab and go somewhere else because they couldn't understand the website and they could not find the place where you would say like, okay, this is what I do, this is what my business is about. So that's another important thing. There are so many people out there with websites that are like visually stunning, like have so many cool things and that are unique. We already touched on authenticity, and I love it when websites are authentic. And like, there are coaches out there who are so in brand with their personal brand and their business brand. So yeah, it's cool. Like, think about the colors and all that. That's important. That really catches my eye when I'm just looking for entrepreneurs out there. So that's another thing. Have a well-defined brand identity and show it everywhere, in your LinkedIn, in your social media profiles, in your website. Like, your brand identity should be everywhere. I really love entrepreneurs who are like that. I go to their LinkedIn and they have their picture and their banner, it's just like related to their business. They keep the same brand identity as their websites. Then I go to their websites and it's just like the same color, same everything. So I love that because that shows consistency, and you can really see it, and these people just stand out because you can really understand who they are, and that makes them different from other businesses. So yeah, that's another important thing that I see. And I already talked about the descriptions on LinkedIn and on the websites, but I don't like it when they're like full of text. And as Brian mentioned, like artificial intelligence is like a huge thing right now. So we all know it. We've all used ChatGPT, and we already know the words that ChatGPT uses. So sometimes it's so easy to tell when someone wrote something on ChatGPT. And don't get me wrong, I don't think it's a bad thing to use ChatGPT. We all use it. But I think like we need to put a little bit of our spark and our authenticity in everything that we write. And it shouldn't be that evident that you use ChatGPT just by using the same words that ChatGPT usually puts on its texts. So yeah, that's another thing that I've been seeing. A lot of people just copy pasting from ChatGPT without putting their twist and their spark on it. And well, yeah, that's another thing that I think it's important to keep in mind.
Yeah, I'm going to call that out, Laura, because you said it so beautifully. You said that a lot of people are poetic about what they say. Entrepreneurs out there, I'm going to call every single one of us out because we have a tendency to use jargon, to use buzzwords. What Laura's talking about, gosh, there are some days where in our internal Slack channel, we'll just drop an entrepreneur's LinkedIn or website in there and we'll ask each other, we'll be like, does anyone know what this person actually does? Because it genuinely is. I'm going to call all of us out. Every single one of us can get better at articulating and simplifying. I think that's the big message here today. What is it that we do? We try to sound so fancy and we try to make it sound so big and grandiose about the things that we do. Simply state, here's exactly what I do. When we go to a website or a LinkedIn and it says, I have a revolutionary technology that's at the intersection of this and this, it's just like, what do you actually do? I don't know the crux of what you do. So it's such simple advice, but it's so powerful. And I think especially heading into the new year, it's a good challenge for all of us to go through our LinkedIns, because whether you use LinkedIn or not, I'm going to call this out, Laura, because I think you're so good at going through people's LinkedIns. I'm one of the entrepreneurs, and we get emails from guests all the time that are like, well, I don't use LinkedIn. Whether you use it or not, we are all using it to scope you out. And so for me personally, as someone who hasn't used LinkedIn since I was, 19 years old, was when I was in the job market for a summer internship as a college student, I don't use LinkedIn. Laura actually uses my LinkedIn more than I do. That's one of those things behind the scenes. But I think that we all have an obligation to at least optimize our LinkedIn, set it up, because whether we use it or not, people are checking it and they're looking and they're making decisions about us based on our LinkedIn. So I think that's super important insights. Laura, I want to go a little bit deeper, because doing this initial research, the websites, the LinkedIn, it's only the first part of the equation. And what a lot of guests and non-guests and what maybe a lot of listeners don't realize is that equally important to us, maybe more important to us, is the actual energy that we see, their attitude over the exchange of emails. We have the best guests in the world. I'm so grateful for all the guests that we have on this show. Laura, you are incredible at finding the best guests for us to bring on and for listeners to learn from, myself to learn from as well. And you interact with all of these entrepreneurs. There's not a single guest that you're not emailing with. There's good emails, there's bad emails, there's the ugly side of entrepreneurship in these emails, there's the lovely side of entrepreneurship in these emails. Shed some light into us. With someone who emails entrepreneurs all day long, what do those communications look like?
Well, I do want to highlight something here, and it's that words are very, very powerful. Like sometimes we don't realize the power of words. So no matter what type of communication it is always important to know that there's another person like on the other side of the screen or just talking to us. Like there's always a receptor, like someone receiving the message. And that's something that we need to keep in mind, because as you said, you can tell a lot about someone's energy from the interactions you have with them. So there are some people that are very enthusiastic, like you, Brian. There are some people that are just like very serious about it. They're like business people, like they're kind of like very tight about their responses. They're so elegant, let's say. So yeah, those people are also nice. Sometimes we think they're too like, I don't know, like not that spontaneous, but they are like really polite. So that's nice. We get very, very polite answers. There are some answers that are a bit rude when they reply back to us, like, no, I don't want this. Or you can, like, sometimes you and I have talked about this, like, it's like, I wouldn't like to have someone like that in my life if they're replying back to me like that. I get that sometimes you can feel like maybe it's a robot, because we right now get a lot of, automatic responses or automatic emails. But what if the person who reads that, or what if there's actually a person who's going to read that? If it's not a robot, then your reply will come off as rude. So yeah, that's another thing that we see. It's not that common. Like most people are very polite or very enthusiastic about being on the podcast, but of course there are some rude people out there. And of course there are some people that are very, I don't know how to say it. Like, I don't like to waste my energy on something that I don't really like. Like, why should I fight over something? Or if I don't want something, then I just ignore it and leave it there. But there are some people who just take the time to be rude, or to say like, okay, I don't want this. Or we got this person who sent like a really long text saying like, I don't want to be there, and explaining why she didn't want to be on the podcast. So yeah, I think like we see everything, but it is important to keep in mind that you can tell a lot about a person for the way they reply to their emails. So yeah, that's like an insight that I have.
Yeah, it's so true. And I'm going to remind everyone, it is free to be nice. It does not cost anything to be nice. There's literally, I cannot think of many or any reasons to send a not so nice email to anyone on the planet, especially someone that you don't know yet. And I think it's fascinating. You're right, Laura. I'm going to call that out. It's a really brilliant insight that one of the trends here as we enter the new year is we all do get a lot of spam email. We get a lot of email in a million different ways, and a lot of it is just automated spam. Those people don't even know who they're reaching out to. But Laura, obviously, we have humans behind all this stuff. Like when someone emails us, they're getting you 99% of the time in response. And it's funny how a lot of people just feel this freedom to write back in a not so nice fashion, probably thinking, yeah, this is just a black hole of robotic emails. And they'll be like, stop, never email me again. And it's like, we genuinely, like, this is a human being who emailed you. And Laura, you are so intentional about the way that you write to people. You actually do research before you reach out to them. You say something about their business that is unique to them. So you have that care and effort in your emails. It's so interesting to see. And I'm going to throw this out there. This is, I never speak not so kindly about entrepreneurs, but I'm going to say that if you are the type of person who is sending nasty emails to strangers over the internet and you're wondering why your business isn't taking off, the two are related. Things go hand in hand. It's why I always have loved that quote, how you do anything is how you do everything. If you show grace, if you show generosity, if you practice abundance, if you put your best foot forward. It's really simple, quite frankly. In all the things in life, it's going to elevate your results in literally every facet of your life. So yeah, for those of you listening, thinking that life is hard at the beginning of your entrepreneurship journey, and why do people reject me? Why do people say no? I can't even get people to reply to me. Even at our level, 7 years in, almost 800 episodes at this point in, we still get rejected. We still get mean emails. It happens to all of us. So yeah, I love those insights, Laura, and kudos to you. I actually want to pause here for a second and call out how great you are. You definitely have a form of mental resilience that took me a long time to learn, that you don't get fazed by these. Talk to us about how you manage that, because obviously it's not related to us directly. It's people mirroring their own inner thoughts about themselves. But I know a lot of people, Laura, would be stopped in their tracks and be like, I don't want to open the email inbox. There might be some mean emails there. What goes through your mind when you see the good and the bad?
I mean, I I think that it's usually not like when people reply, they're like reflecting who they are. It's not about us, like the person who's receiving the email, it's about them. And we're like that as well. Like when I reply to an email of someone that I don't know, or any email really, I'm just thinking about how I'm going to look like for that person. So yeah, it's always about us. Like it's not really about you, it's always about the person who's replying. So I just keep that in mind, and I just think, is that person that's being rude really important? Like, would I care about that in like a year from now, or even a week from now? Like, will I remember what that person said to me? And maybe I won't. So yeah, that's what I keep in mind always. Like when I open the inbox, I know I'm going to find some nasty emails, as you said, but most of them are going to be nice. So that's another thing that I keep in mind. It's like the good people out there definitely outnumbers the bad people out there, or the people who have, past traumas, or who let let's say their fears or their past experiences get in the way, or of really opening up to the world and finding cool opportunities and cool people out there. So I just approach life in general with an open mindset of, I'm going to find everything out there, but I am just going to stick with the good stuff, like the nice answers, the polite replies that we get. There are so many people who are so nice about what you said. Like I do put a lot of effort into what I tell people about their businesses and about them. There are so many cool people doing cool stuff out there, and I like to highlight that, let them know that they're special and what they're doing is nice. And a lot of people are really grateful about that. Like, as I said, words are very powerful. So everything, every single good word that you put out there, it's going to come back to you. Like good stuff just multiplies. So I love it when people are grateful about the words that I write. They're like, "Oh, thank you so much for saying that about me," or "I'm flattered that you think that way about my business." So I just take that and I try to ignore, the bad stuff. Even sometimes make fun of it. Like, okay, it's funny that this person thinks like that, or just sends stop like in capital letters. Like, it's just like what is going through their minds, or what is going on in their lives, or their businesses to be like that. I don't know, so I'm not going to take it personally. So yeah, it's just a matter of highlighting the good stuff and trying to minimize as much as possible the bad stuff.
Yes. And
That's the way that I approach life.
I love it, Laura. And to be abundantly clear to everyone, that's the thing. And this is going to be true in life and in business. It's going to be 98% full of just goodness. 2%, when we talk about kind of the not so nice emails that we get, those represent, if anything, maybe 2% of all the emails and entrepreneurs and potential guests that we get to interact with. So it is that minority. And I think it's so important to always put that into perspective. Yes, you can laugh about it, but always remember it's a reflection of them more than it is ourselves. Really well stated, Laura. I want to talk about this. Obviously, you and I could talk for days, and that's why all of our meetings are so much fun internally. But I'm sure that a lot of listeners, well, I know this because we get emails from listeners and they're like, how do you guys do this? 5 episodes a week. And for a long time, this was a one-man show. I'm so excited that we have an awesome team now. But a lot of people are always curious about the behind the scenes. And Laura, I would actually argue that people see, obviously, I get to be on camera, I get to host these conversations, but a lot of the work happens behind the scenes. A podcast is not just you hit record, you hit publish, and boom, the work is over. There's a lot that goes into it. I'd love for you to shed some insights from you. Obviously, we've talked so much today about you lining up the guests, but there's so many other things you do. Show notes don't happen by mistake. LinkedIn doesn't happen by mistake. Walk us through all these different elements that people might not realize lives behind a successful podcast that reaches people in over 150 countries. And this year, we're one of the top 1.5% of podcasts on planet Earth. Laura, what's all that stuff behind the scenes that people probably don't realize goes into it?
Well, you already mentioned something that's really important, and it's show notes. Is, like describing what the episode is about. You always invite listeners to check the show notes for the links of the guests that we have on, their websites, their LinkedIn, everything that they mention on the episode. And that takes a lot of work because you have to go to every single website and every single LinkedIn. And as you already mentioned, and we've talked about this a lot today, I already go through that, like when I'm doing my research. So I'm basically doing kind of like double work there because I look for the entrepreneur, and then when there are a guest on the show, I go back to their website and I linked it on the show notes. So yeah, there's a lot of work there, like on the show notes, writing what they're about, the bio, all that. There's also the social media part, all the content that we create for our guests, their videos, the images, the Instagram stories, all that is there too. Knowing what to upload on TikTok or on YouTube Shorts, that we also do that. So shout out to our social media here as well, because we do put a lot of work into it as well. And of course, like the thing that takes up most time, it's finding the guest and outreaching to them. I would say like that's the hardest part of it all. But there's also like a lot of work in post production when the episode launches, right before we launch an episode, like making sure that everything's there just so we can have all the content ready for the show to be live, all that. So yeah, I would say, like you say that there is a lot of work into it, and it's not like 1,000 tasks. There are 1,000 tasks actually, now that I think about it. But yeah, like it's not that complicated. There's a lot of work into it, but it's not like another world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think part of it, obviously, listeners are probably just like, tell us about some of those systems. And listeners, we're going to drop some of the key tools that we use internally because, like Laura said, it's not, none of it is complicated. Any of it in isolation, can you go through an episode and you all hear me at the end of our guest episodes be like, here's all the links, they're going to be in the show notes. And Laura is the one who's going through those transcriptions and making sure that they're there. So yeah, you're right, Laura. It's just tasks. It's work that has to happen that makes all this possible that people probably don't realize. They for sure realize it when they launch their own show and they go, oh my gosh, this isn't as easy as I thought that it was. There's so much that happens behind the scenes. And I want to talk about our systems, some of the key tools that we use internally. But before we go there, I want to put it out there because a lot of guests, a lot of potential guests, and a lot of listeners always ask me about timeline because of all these different moving pieces. And we're super organized. We've got a lot of systems with regards to all of that. Laura typically is a month to 3 months ahead of what's hitting the airwaves. So Laura knows long before I do which guests are coming on. I mean, we're recording this in December. We are booking out late March interviews. So Laura knows way before I do who these guests are that's coming on. We've shaped, here's the type of content, here's the type of outreach that we're doing. We've got filtering within our database of entrepreneurs that we reach out to as far as industries, certain times of year. We have more financial guests that you all see, Q1 when it's tax season, we have a lot of accountants on. So we're intentional about that. But all of this stuff, Laura really stays far ahead of me. So it is those different considerations of not only the tasks, but the timeline as well. 5 episodes a week, we can't figure it out on that Monday and somehow magically line up guests. So a lot of it is staying in front of it. Laura, with that said, what are some of the tools? What I'm thinking of that listeners probably don't realize is how much we rely on Notion. Notion is like at the forefront of our podcast process. When an episode happens, for example, so I'm on with a guest, I hit finish recording, I upload the MP3 files to all the different places where they need to go, some of which is an AI tool that helps in generating show notes, transcribing the episode, all of that. We use Canva for the graphics, but I'm going to call out Notion actually because our production calendar, we know exactly what episode is going to air on March 20th. I'm just picking that as a date. I don't know if it's a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, but we already know. And within each episode is a checklist of certain things that I do, certain things that someone else may do that's on the team, certain things that you handle, such as the show notes. Talk to us about, I guess, give us an overview from your perspective, the Slack, the Notion, the various tools that we use. Shout out to Cast Magic. I think that's something we don't talk about enough in the world of podcasting. Hopefully there's at least one podcaster listening that gets that insight. But Laura, I'd love to hear how you interact with all the different tools. Which tools make all this stuff possible that other entrepreneurs can lean on?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Cast Magic is great help. Show notes take up a lot of time, so Cast Magic help us, take the insights of each episode as well as for social media. Like if I upload a video of a certain episode, I can go back to Cast Magic and know what the episode was about. So yeah, that's a very, very cool tool. As you mentioned, we have a lot of things in Notion. So it's always just a matter of organizing and knowing what content we need out there and what tasks we need to complete, to have the episodes live. So as you mentioned, we have our production calendar. There we have like every single task and we have to make sure, everything's ready to go. On Slack, we do have our conversations internally. We also use email tools. We do have a tool for finding the emails of the people that we want to outreach to. And we do have an inbox, shared inbox where we can find all the replies that we receive and, reply back to people from there. That's a really cool tool too. It helps, inboxes stay organized because when you receive the amount of emails that we receive daily, from outreaching to our guests, it can be hard to keep your inbox organized. So yeah, that tool definitely helps us a lot on making sure that we don't leave someone without a reply or a pending reply there. If we forget about someone that we outreach to, and just knowing and keeping all the systems together, just so we don't miss anything. And as you said, it is very important for us to stay ahead of the things that are coming. We cannot just say okay, we have a guest they're like for tomorrow and for, I don't know, Thursday. On Thursday we don't have episodes, Friday. And record the episode on Thursday, like we cannot do it because there's like a lot of work that we need to put into it. We have to have everything ready for the episode to launch. So yeah, I would say like the most important tool for us right now is Notion, emailing tools, Cast Magic. The help of AI is just fantastic, and Slack to keep communicating, and of course Canva for the graphics. You already mentioned it as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to make it clear, Laura talks about our universal inbox, for example. That really is the hub of where so much stuff happens. And we have tweaked this over the year for sure. The way we were 6 months ago is not the way that we are now. We've definitely refined those systems a little bit. But for example, we can all, I think this is an important thing to call out, that we as a team, we can all access all the things. I trust when I'm on the go, if I am driving and I need Laura to access something, Laura can literally access anything and everything within all of my businesses, not just, obviously today we're talking about the podcast, but I think it's important for everyone to have that accessibility to all the things. And that's where obviously trust comes in. That's something that's so foundational to any internal team. But I think it's important. And also we have automation set up. So for example, if there's an email that I personally need to reply to, I'm not in the inboxes as much as Laura is. So there are certain tags that she can apply, which then hit, instead of using Zapier, I use Albato. So if anyone is looking for an alternative to Zapier, I love Albato. And so when Laura tags an email a certain way within our global inbox, it then actually goes to Slack, because I pay more attention to Slack than I do the email inbox. So it'll say a contact is queued for Brian to reply to. And so it's automations like that. All of this stuff happens with systems. And I think it's so important. Laura, it's been really fun letting people get an insight into this. I had no idea how long this episode would be. We're almost at an hour. This is a long episode here on the show, but I'm not going to let you go yet here today, because I know that you and I just had our internal 2024 planning meeting, and listeners are going to get to see a lot of growth, a lot of new things, not aimed at us just doing fun things, but aimed to more deeply serve entrepreneurs, listeners, guests, literally the entire entrepreneurial world at large. Laura, tease some of those growth plans for us here. What are some of the things that you're excited about that we've got coming in the pipeline in 2024 and beyond?
Well, I'm excited about pushing our YouTube channel a little bit more. Like the podcast is huge, but we still have some work to do on YouTube. So that's something I'm really excited about, because right now the podcasting world is like full of video podcast, and that's like a huge thing now. We already have our interviews and everything on video. So we will definitely push that and grow a little bit more on that front. And also we will try to, have more cool resources beyond the podcasts that entrepreneurs can access to. So yeah, I think like our growth plans are way more focused on having more people, reaching more people, having more people know who we are, and sharing a lot of resources that can be valuable to them. I think like that's the core of our 2024 plans.
Yes, absolutely. A really good way to sum that up. Laura, I think listeners need to experience a little bit of your magic when it comes to numerology, because I think we're dancing around. Our real mission is obviously to more deeply serve people. And this is why 7 years ago, I didn't start this podcast for fun. It's because I believe that entrepreneurship is the vehicle to change the world. And I don't mean that in a small way. I mean it in a big way. It has changed my world. Entrepreneurship is all I've ever known since I've been 19 years old. And it genuinely has changed my life and allowed me to change the lives of others. Laura and I, it never goes unnoticed. And we are forever grateful about the fact that the work that we do hits the airwaves of all of you all around the world. I think that it's crazy when I look at the listener map, 150 countries, thinking about the individual lives, the dreams that we're sparking in the work that we're able to do, and the incredible messages and stories of guests. So yeah, Laura, from a place of service, if there's some numerology that you want to drop on us, talk to us about why that's so important to you, because a lot of people might not be tuned into their life path, for example, is something that you interested me in this week. Talk about the impacts that we can do, because self-reflection, it's something that stands out to me and that I admire in the way that you live personally, is how important these things are to you. Just take a second and share that with listeners of some of those resources that you turn to start finding better answers with regards to self-awareness, your own answers, your own unique life for yourself?
Yeah, so there are a lot of tools out there for you to know yourself. You can just pick the one that better suits you. I am a very energetic person, and I'm all into numerology, astrology. Those two have been like big tools for me. I know a lot of people see that as superstitious or stuff like that, but they have really been like cool and insightful tools for me to get to know myself. And as I said, there are so many things out there. But the cool thing about numerology is that it's literally numbers. So it's all about adding up the dates of your birthday, the dates of your year, the dates of the year that we're on. And every single thing in the world has an energy. Like we've already talked about this. It's all about the energy we do the things with and for. So with numbers, it's exactly the same thing. We have our own unique energy based on our name, as I already said, our birth date. So numerology is all about knowing what number you are. You can be a number from 1 to 9. And just finding the energy that you have within those numbers. As I said, like you have a different number for your name, for your birth date. There are numbers for the type of work you do. There are numbers for so many things, and a lot of people have studied this deeply. But the thing with the life path number that you mentioned is like in astrology they talk about the solar sign. You know, we all have a sign. Like I'm a Libra, I'm a Cancer, I'm Aquarius. So it's not like every single person who is a number 2, for example. Brian, you and I are both number 2, and 11, which is a master number, but that's another story, that's another thing. But yeah, it's not like we are all exactly the same, but we do have some similarities and some things that will definitely happen to us in life, and some lessons that we're here to learn, and some things that we came here to do. Our mission or the impact that we're going to make in the world is all related to the energy of our number. We're all not the same. We're all very, very different. And our life experiences take us where we are today, took us where we are today, and will take us where we will be. But yeah, numerology is all about that, like knowing what energy you carry within yourself and how you can expand that energy, and maybe work on the things that are not so positive about that energy. And another interesting thing about numerology is that besides the life path number, we all have different energies for different years. So not every year is the same for us. So for example, year number 9 is a year when things end for us. So Brian and I just came out of year number 9, sorry. So maybe we were going through some changes in our lives. And year number 1 is all about new beginnings. And year number 5, it's about, I don't know, making more money or traveling. So yeah, it all depends on the energy that you come from and the energy of that particular year. So yeah, if you want to check out on the internet, there is a lot of information out there about numerology, and you can just start playing around with it. As I said, like the cool thing about numerology is that when it's related to numbers, people who are more rational, let's say, and believe more in science will be like, okay, so this is numbers, this is legit. So yeah, that's cool about it too. So if you want to check it out, there's a lot of information about it out there, and you can get to know yourself and understand why you're going through certain things as well.
Yeah, and listeners, just so you know, Laura had no idea that I was going to put her on the spot for that, but Laura, you did such a good job of that overview, and I think it's really important. The reason why I called it out is because here at the end of the calendar year, heading into a fresh year, so much of our content this month has really focused on being self-aware, being reflective, being introspective, and orienting your sales so that they're in the right direction. Laura, so much of our conversation here today, you and I can't help ourselves. We keep saying the word intentionality. We talk about energy. And so a lot of people are going to look at what happens in the world of Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur over the span of 2024, and they're going to be like, holy cow, they absolutely blew up. They did all of these huge things. How did that happen? It happened now, you guys. I mean, it started happening months ago, but all of this stuff that's coming in the next 12 months and beyond, none of it is going to happen by mistake. We are so intentional about the direction that we're going in, and so much of it comes from being self-aware, not only as individuals, but as a team. Where do we want to go? It's a core part of what Laura and I have done this month here in December, is sitting down and saying, what do we want to be as a company moving forward? What are the things that we want to do, whether it's quarterly retreats all around the world? Stay tuned on stuff regarding that. Whether it's strategic things, whether it's, you talked about, let's double down. Let's finally take YouTube seriously. We've ignored this platform for 7 years now. Let's actually start taking it seriously. None of those things happen by mistake. So as Laura said, some people will feel like, energy, all this stuff is woo-woo, or maybe it's superstitious. Take what works for you and leave the rest behind, but keep moving forward, keep setting those sails. I know that that's what we're going to be doing in 2024. Laura, honestly, this was a special episode for me. It's been so much fun. We could have kept going for hours and hours and hours. I hope that listeners really enjoy this unique insight behind the scenes into what makes this show possible, what makes us able to impact and serve and help so many entrepreneurs all over the world. It really is at the root of our mission. So Laura, thank you so much for coming on here today. I'm going to let you have the last words in this episode. Take it away with some of your thoughts on what you think, whether it's internally or a motto or a saying. What do you know with hope and optimism that is possible for all of us in 2024?
Well, I believe that 2024 will be a year of abundance. We will all be, like in this abundant mindset, not only about money, but everything that happens in our lives. So we already said this word a lot. It's all about intentionality and having this abundant mindset of, okay, whatever I do will definitely come back to me somehow, somewhere, maybe not in the same way that I put it out there. But yeah, it is all about doing the right thing so we can get the right results back to us.
Yes, very well said. Thank you so much, Laura, for all the work that you do to make all this possible. And thanks so much for joining us here on the show today.